Good morning, everybody. Let me welcome you all on behalf of the University Research Council for this webinar on all about publishing. We have few resource persons lined up today, and our first resource person is Professor Iresha Mendish. Let me introduce Iresha. She's going to talk about the preparation of manuscript and submission process. She's a professor attached to the food science and technology. She was listed under the top 2% researchers of the recent database published by Stanford University, and it was Elsevier. And I'm sure, with her research experience, she's the best person to talk about the topic. So let me hand over the mic to Iresha to go from there. Thank you, Iresha.
Thank you, Professor Janaka. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So during my presentation today, I'll be sharing with you about preparation of manuscripts and submission process. And as you all understand, these are very broader topics, but I'll be covering most important aspects that would be very useful for the audience. So the very first question we all need to ask, okay, why and what to publish? We, the scientific community, we do research, and time to time we do scientific information dissemination. So the publishing become one of the very important functions of our day-to-day life. But we should have a very clear idea about what to publish and what not to publish. When we are giving a message to the scientific community, it should be new and original, could be results or methods. And sometimes we go for review articles and summaries, especially published in letters of a particular topic of interest. And as a whole, the manuscripts that we are publishing should advance the knowledge and understanding in certain arenas of scientific fields. And the most importantly, what not to publish. Now, sometimes we try to publish which are not of scientific interest and outdated work and duplications of previously published work, and sometimes unacceptable or incorrect conclusions. So as I told you, we need to publish good manuscripts that will serve to fill the gaps in the scientific research area, and definitely would contribute to advance the knowledge in the field. And we should look at what makes a good manuscript. Most of the time, what we see, maybe scientific reports or journals, they are completely technical jargons. So when you are writing a manuscript, you should be careful of making it a clear, useful, and giving an exciting scientific message. And logical flow is very important, and formatting, giving the results in a very well formatted manner. And the style of writing, it should be scientific way of writing, but the style of writing should be very clear. It should give a very clear message. And there are things, ethical issues in publishing. Now, currently we experience fabrication of results. That's becoming really common because people are interested in publishing more and more papers. But falsification of results is a serious scientific misconduct. And also, when you are doing research and trying to publish your data and doing research, ethical clearance would be very important. And this, when you are doing research, especially in terms of animal and human related clinical studies, you have to comply with internationally recognized principles. And also there are some misconducts in relation to publication. Plagiarism is a very serious thing. What you are publishing should be your own property. Sometimes copying word to word contents from the other people's work would be another aspect of plagiarism. So the duplicating submissions, duplicating publications, and also lack of acknowledgement of the people who supported you during your research, maybe the technical support or any other sort of support. So that becomes really unethical. And identification of co-authors, that is also an issue, because sometimes people don't include the people who worked. Sometimes people include who did not work. So these are considered ethical issues in publishing. And conflict of interest. Now, some journals require to declare any sort of conflict of interest, maybe in terms of the topic that you were studying or anything related to the scientific content. Now, coming to the most important aspect of writing a journal article. The structure is very important. How do you structure your journal article or the paper? Now, in general, these are the contents that you would include in a full article. That is the title, and you will include the authors and the abstract, keywords, and the main text. That is, we denote it as in red. That is introduction, methods, resource, and discussion. And discussion would include the main conclusions that you come up with your study. And also acknowledgements, references, and important supplementary material. Maybe the supplementary material would be related to the methods and materials that you are using in your study. So these are the main important contents of a full article. So let me take you through each and every part of a good manuscript, and what are the main considerations you should have in writing each and every part of this. The very important thing that you need to remember is this is the order you should try to write, because it will make you more scientific. It will make your journal article more scientific and readable, and it will create some good message in the minds of people who read your article. The very first thing that you should come up with your figures and tables, that is your resource, and then you should write your methods, resource and discussion, and conclusions and introduction, and finally you should write the most important part, that is the abstract and also the title. As I told you earlier, now each and every section of a journal article has a definite purpose, so you should fulfill the purpose. Otherwise, it will not be a useful article for the audience. Title. What are the main considerations you should have in writing the title? Now, this is your opportunity to attract the reader, right? This is very important to make people interested in citing your article. So the title should be very clearly written. It should be informative, not a technical jargon for sure, but it should be very informative and concise, right? And also you have to discuss with your co-authors in deciding the title, because sometimes some contributors of the research or the authors do not agree with the title decided by maybe one or two authors. So therefore, it should be discussed with the co-authors and definitely should not be a technical jargon with very many abbreviations. Right. The very important part of the manuscript is the abstract. Why do I say so? Now, the abstract is the way that you can sell, that you can market your article. Because I very clearly told you that it will make a very big impact in the minds of the readers in citing your article. So now when we submit a journal article to a particular journal, the editors who receive, that is the very first contact with your work and with you. So they can decide whether this is a useful article or not and suitable to be published in a particular journal or not. So therefore, the abstract should be very clear and also honest. And you should cover all the major points of what you have come up with, your outcome of your research or outcome of your any scientific method or anything. So this should be very concise way of writing. Keywords. So just after the abstract, you have to mention the keywords. So this becomes, a label of your manuscript. So maybe there are some journals that require certain number of keywords. So for that, you need to definitely follow the author guidelines in deciding number of keywords and how it should be listed. But you need to remember, the most important thing that you need to remember is this will impact in correct indexing and searching your article. So when the people in the future will try to research in a particular area, so the keywords will make a big impact in citing your article because it is a label for your journal submission. Coming to the introduction. What are the main aspects that you should consider in writing the introduction? Now, this is the place where you highlight the importance of your work. So it should be able to convince the reader. So what do you do in writing the introduction? You describe the problem because we do research to fill gaps. So gaps of what? The problems in the scientific world. So you have to describe the problem and you have to specify whether there are any existing solutions and what would be the speciality of what you are proposing in your as a solution in your journal article, and what are the limitations and what is your expectation and what do you hope to achieve by doing a particular study. And in writing the introduction, you can include some of the main publications related to your work. But remember, editors, they really do not like that people, refer to irrelevant work and also coming up with very inappropriate judgments, maybe on your own achievement. So it should be very honest way of writing, concise way of writing, to the point and with a very, very clear focus. So writing the introduction in a very clear manner is a kind of a challenge for the people who are doing research, because you can't write a very long technical jargons. So you have to be very clear about how concise the way you need to write the introduction. Materials and methods. So maybe in doing research, if you are trying to publish an article that you have done research using different methods and different materials. So the message you are giving should be adequate enough for a knowledgeable researcher to reproduce the experiments. So the method should be written very clearly. I know personally, some people try to hide very important aspects of the experiment to make, not other people try to do the same experiment, which is considered very unethical in conducting scientific research. So you have to sometimes use already established methods. In such a case, you don't have to repeat all the details of a particular method, but you can write a small summary and giving the exact or relevant references. And also, when you are writing very incomplete or incorrect type of descriptions in methods, that will make a point for the reviewers to reject your paper at a glance. Results. So this is the very important thing that, doing a research, you have come up with certain results, may be very important to fill the gaps in the scientific knowledge. So for the advancement of the scientific knowledge. But when you are trying to include results to a manuscript, scientific manuscript, so you have to include only reproducible and representative results, and in relation to the discussion that you are planning to include in your article. So the representative and important to make a discussion. And people are trying to hide some data and trying to have another publication, but it will maybe would not support to highlight what you want to give the message to the reader. So therefore maybe you can't come up with a very clear conclusion because of not adequate supplying of data. When you are tabulating the results should be uncrowded, and maybe the scale of the tabulating would be very important. And especially you have to be very mindful of not giving very long and boring tables. So sometimes when we look at journal articles, some tables become really not useful because they are very boring, long tables. And when you are, providing the results, you should try to make it a very useful and easy to understand clear story. So those are the very important things that you need to understand in including results to your manuscript. Discussion. Now, discussion is the way that you can explain the reader what are the results that you have achieved and what does it mean. So you are trying to give a very particular message about your results. So when you are writing the discussion section, right? So you have to pay more attention to your results. So you have to focus on your results and you try to sell your data. Now this is the place where you can sell your data. Your outcome is very important, and it will advance the knowledge of the research, the current research. So every message need to be included in the discussion. So if the discussion part is weaker, so that is definitely would contribute to the rejection of the article. So sometimes people try to write something completely irrelevant to the results that you have obtained in your research. So that will become really not useful in your discussion. And when you are writing the discussion, it's not only your work, maybe the the related work, conducted by the researchers in the field. And also you must try to show, now discussing the work done by other people, but you should try to explain the reader why your research become important for the specific field. So what is your the speciality in your work? So that is very important. Coming to conclusions. Now, maybe you can come up with several conclusions. Maybe sometimes what you have done would not make a contribution to give a very positive message to the reader or the scientific community, but you have to be very clear about what you are trying to conclude. Maybe sometimes you can advance the knowledge currently have in the field, and when you are writing the conclusions, again, like all the other sections in the journal article, it should be very clear. Now, when you do not have very clear conclusions, especially the stakeholder group that become really disappointed would be the reviewers. So before it is getting published, the reviewers would check whether the conclusions are clear, because without clear conclusions, for them it is very difficult to judge whether this would be a useful article for the scientific community or for the reader. And one of the main mistakes people do, they try to include the information that you have included in the abstract. So you should understand the difference between what you are trying to give in your abstract and what should be written in the conclusion. So the conclusion would be the impact of what you have achieved. But in abstract, you are trying to write a kind of a summary of what you have done in your study. So therefore, you need to understand the difference between abstracts and conclusions, and also you should not repeat the things that you have written in your abstract. And acknowledgements and references. So people, to be ethical, need to recognize the people who supported you, maybe kind of technical support or maybe any other sort of support while doing the research. So you should recognize the people who supported you. And writing the references. This is where people do lots of mistakes. After writing the journal articles or coming to the references, sometimes people kind of tired in writing, and they don't follow the scientific way of writing the references. So there are different styles of writing references, and journal to journal the requirements are different. But when you are writing, these are the main the messages I would like to give you in writing references. So cite the main scientific publications on which your work is based, and also do not try to write more references and try to inflate the manuscript. So that is not scientific. So you have to try to, include only important references that would support your work. And people try to get citations from your own work, so they try to go for excessive self-citations, which is not encouraged. And also, when you are, trying to have references, do not try to get references from the same region. Try to have a kind of the mixture of references coming from different regions in relation to a particular research. Now, this is very important for the beginners who are maybe early career, and also the postgraduate students. Maybe there are postgraduate students in this audience. So this becomes really important because sometimes people get confused of the tenses, especially the scientific language that you are trying to produce your journal article. Now, these are not hard and fast rules, I must say, because some journals in some countries, now especially the journals published by USA, so they don't have very hard and fast rules in scientific language. Even sometimes they go for layman language. But I'm taking the majority, the rules followed by the majority. So the present tense is used for writing the known facts and hypotheses, and usually we use past tense in writing experiments that we conduct, and also again past tense when you are describing the results. So that this would be very important for you to send or write a journal article to a normal journal, but this is not something very mandatory, but you have to understand this is the common the style of writing or giving scientific language in terms of tenses. Okay, the second part of my topic, how to select the right journal. Now, there are important considerations in selecting a journal for you to submit your work. Now, the good choice will definitely help you to get a better impact of your work and better reputation of what you have done as a research. Now, what are the main factors that you need to consider? The very important thing is you should select a journal relevant to your the area of work, area of study, and also you can look at the recent articles published by a particular journal, whether those articles are recognized in general, recognized by the majority, and it should be very communicative. So give a very good messages to the scientific community. Internationality, that means recognized by many countries, and also that you need to consider aspects like the likelihood of acceptance. So some of the journals, it's very difficult for you to get a acceptance. So if so, it is a very time consuming, and just you don't get any positive results of submitting your work to such journals. And also you need to consider about time from the submission to publication. So those are the main factors, other than several other things to consider, but these are the main aspects that you need to consider. As you all know, there are different types of publications, sometimes research papers, case studies, review articles, viewpoints, right? So you have to check whether what you are trying to publish would be acceptable for the journal that you are trying to select. And there are journals called, some are open access journals, and closed access journals. Where open access journals, the person who is trying to publish article need to pay in publishing, and the readers, for the readers, the articles are free, can be read without paying any sort of money. But closed access, the people who are publishing need not to pay money, but the people who read it need to pay money in reading the articles. The other aspects, now one of the very important aspects in current world we consider is the ranking. The ranking of the journal, the citation, now that is purely based on the citations for the articles published. Now there is a way of calculating the impact factor of a particular journal. I'm not going to talk about those things, but some people very much consider about the ranking of the journal and the citations of the articles, but it is not the exact way of deciding the quality of the journal, but mostly yes. And also when you are selecting the journal, you have to be very critical in thinking whether you are going to publish your work in a national journal or a local journal or international journal. And also you have to be clearly understand, you have to understand clearly whether you are going for a very good one article which would be published in a top ranked journal, or maybe you divide your work into different parts and you'll be publishing different several articles in low ranked journals. So that's up to you to decide based on your requirement. But we prefer to have a top rank, just one article would be very important there, rather than going for a few or several articles in low rank journals. These are just reputed journal publishers for the postgraduate students, just to share with you. Elsevier, Springer, and Wiley and Taylor Francis. These are just some reputed journal publishers. Sage Journals, ACS Publications, and as I told you, these are open access journal publishers. Hindawi, so scientific research publishing. So these are just for your information. And Biomed Central. Okay, so how to select the right journal? Because sometimes when you are selecting a journal and sending your work, even without going into the normal review process, papers are getting rejected. Because when you are writing the journal article, you don't fulfill the requirements of the journal. That means you don't follow the author guidelines, because in every journal very clearly the author guidelines are given. So it will give you the message, the scope of the journal, the type of papers that they are accepting, and the length of the article, the reference styles, all these are very clearly given. So when you are selecting journals, identify few target journals and try to read the current issues, some articles, and get an idea whether the work that you are trying to publish would be suitable to be published in this journal. So and also when you're submitting the work, sometimes you need to send it directly to the editor. Sometimes you have to follow the online submission process. Most of the journals, they have online tracking system and online portal where you can submit your the research. So you have to be very clear about the submission, method of submission. So if I summarize you the submission process, so you can maybe following the guidelines given in the author guidelines, maybe in a particular website, a particular portal. So you can submit the paper. So what will happen when it is received by the editor? What editor checks would be whether the basic requirements are met. If yes, they will, the editors or editor would assign the reviewers. If the basic requirements are not met, definitely they would reject the paper. And also when assigning the reviewers, so the reviewers will go through the content and would give a recommendation, right? And based on the recommendations of the reviewers, the editors would make a decision in order to accept or reject the paper. Sometimes the editors communicate with the authors, indicating the revisions required, and when the revisions are done and they need to submit the paper again, the revised form, and again we'll go through the same path and would decide whether adequately revised, and if adequately revised, maybe the acceptance would be the results. If not, again would be the rejection. So when you are submitting your work, this is one of the important requirements, that is the cover letter. Now, when you are writing the cover letter, be mindful. This is your chance to speak to the editor directly. Right now, you can sell your work. So you have to emphasize. I mean, don't try to, tell what you have done, what are the methods you followed, all these technical jargon. No, just give a message why this work is important to the particular scientific field or scientific community. So why this become important to improve the knowledge advancement, also the fill the knowledge gaps in a particular field. So if you can emphasize why your work is useful and why your work is important, that would be the best thing, because without even looking at the journal article, maybe editors get a message from the cover letter. So you have to be very careful in writing a very professional cover letter. The grammar and everything would make an impact. So you have to be very mindful in writing the cover letter. And some journals ask you to, suggest reviewers, because it is a very time-consuming process in getting papers reviewed. So if you try give the potential reviewers, maybe sometimes you need to give about 3 to 4 reviewers. So how you can decide on the reviewers? What you can do is when you are citing the related work, so you can decide on the people who have done, or the researchers who have done the similar work and suitable to look at the scientific content and the suitability of the work that you have done. So, but be ethical in not, proposing or suggesting maybe the known people to you. Those are again some unethical the conducts. So some people try to send their names of their friends, but maybe the editors would not accept, if because they will also try to understand whether these people are really suitable to review your paper. So that is also one other aspect other than writing the cover letter. When you are submitting the paper, this becomes important aspect. And let's look at why the rejections of manuscripts occur most of the time. So the people experience manuscript rejections. Now, what are the main reasons for the manuscript rejections? The first thing, when you are submitting your work, sometimes you do not try to understand the scope of the journal. So when you are submitting papers, really irrelevant to the scope of a particular journal, so maybe just one day. It takes just one day for the editor to reject your paper. So very clearly you should understand the scope of your work and the scope of the journal that you are trying to publish your work. And the following the author guidelines. So that is one of the very a big mistake that the authors do, but it's very easy for you to take time and follow author guidelines. But most of the time, people do not take much care in following the author guidelines. So the failure to the format the paper according to the author guidelines would definitely lead to the rejection. So, and inappropriate reviewers. So this will make a judgment for the editors that whether the people, authors are very ethical in scientific work. So that is one way of reflecting your the ethics. So suggesting reviewers will also make an impact. So inadequate response to reviewers. So once the editors inform you about the comments given by the reviewers, sometimes people do not take much care in adjusting or modifying and improving the article considering the comments given by the reviewers. So, but it is not a difficult task, but sometimes it takes time because the reviewers suggest conducting some additional work. So if so, it becomes a little difficult because maybe it is not a time for you to continue your work again. So in such a sense, maybe you can take a different decision not to send it back to the same journal. So that the maybe some comments are possible for you to do, but maybe some of the comments are impossible. So and also the standard of English. Now we Sri Lankans, we are not native English speakers, so maybe sometimes the way we are writing, but maybe not suitable. But you know, there are so many free even the sites where you can get your writing corrected, the scientifically corrected. Also, maybe there is a possibility you can send your articles to native English speakers and getting them corrected. So that's for especially for the postgraduate students. Maybe your supervisors are there, your colleagues are there, who are very conversant and confident in writing. So you can get the support of them in getting the standard of English writing. And it is not just English; it is the scientific language. You have to make sure it is adequate. It is the adequate standard of writing. And as I told you, people try to resubmit the articles without revising based on the comments given by the reviewers. So it will definitely would lead to the rejection of papers. So these are the main the points or the reasons behind the rejection of papers. And I think I covered the main aspects adhering to the time given to me. The main aspects in writing the preparation of the journal article and also the submission process.
Thank you very much for the informative session. So the next session will be conducted by Professor Samantha from University of Peradeniya. He's a role as an affiliate faculty. Professor Samantha is a supervisor, students Master of Public Health thesis. Serve as a supervisor for students conducting their practices in Sri Lanka. Dr. Dharmaratna holds a Bachelor Medicine and Surgery degree, a Master's of Science degree in Community Medicine. So over to you, sir, to conduct the session about how to get more citation for publication.
Thank you very much. Would like to thank Professor Janaka Ekanayaka, Director of the University Research Council, and board members of the University Research Council for inviting me. And the topic or the title given to me is how to get more citations for publication. So this is interlinked. So if you don't have publications, you can't get citations, and publications comes to research. So actually we can reorganize this even to say how to do more research, because if you don't do research, you won't get citations or publications. And I thought I'll introduce this by saying why citations? Why do you need citations, or what do you get by getting citations? So these are some of the things you will do. This recognition. People will recognize you as a researcher or a person who have done research, who have published. No point in doing research and keeping the research project or your thesis as a secret. So a lot of people do it and then put the thesis in a drawer, put a padlock and throw away the key. So basically no one knows that you have done research. Therefore, this will give you recognition. So sometimes people get a little bit angry thinking that they should be basically recognized for research, but what they forget is they have not published, so no one knows. It's a secret. Again, couldn't tell at the beginning. Please allow me to go without the video because I'm old chap and my face is not that nice. So if you see my face, you might basically get sick of the presentation even if it is started. So no video, only the presentation. First, you get recognition, people get to know you, and then through recognition and through citations, it makes life easy for or to take funding, because everyone knows you need funding to do research. For everything funding is needed. Now at the moment the country is not having any funding, no rupees or dollars, so that is a problem for various sectors. Similarly, if you don't have funding, so you can't get funding, then you will have problems in doing research, and this becomes a vicious circle. So when you have more citation, you get more recognition. Through that, you get more funding, you do more research, and your citations increase. So I think everyone knows what citations is and what citations are. I'm not going to talk about that. And then the third one is awards. So you get awards, research awards. In Sri Lanka, you get presidential awards. Another person will talk about what presidential awards are in this workshop. And you get awards, so you are recognized. You become rich through funding, because everyone again knows that this funding, some amount goes to the investigators, not Sri Lankan funding through National Science Foundation or National Research Council. Those you cannot, the investigators can't get paid. But outside huge grants, definitely investigators also get paid. And remember, a lot of people do research not for anything. These are not the main thing. A lot of people, not Sri Lankan, but international, a lot of Sri Lankan also, they do research because to get rich, because you get paid and you get money out of research. So, but we are not directly talking about research, but citations. So through citations, you get awards also. Then definitely university or any other place, you can use this for promotion. Everyone knows in the university, one main area for you to get promoted to professor or any other promotions is research. And so citations come to research, and then research citations allows you to promotion, and citations gives you mark. Again, people know to get promoted to your professorship in the university system in Sri Lanka. And then CV, curriculum vitae, definitely one of the most important things. Whether you are academic or not, it doesn't matter. One of the most important things in your curriculum vitae is your research and then citations. And there are a lot of other things, so which I'm not going to talk about today. Then allow me to tell a little bit, small amount on research. So this is something I found on the internet. I was just rubbing sticks together for fun. So a lot of research, a lot of findings have also come through people doing things to enjoy life. I didn't realize I was doing basic research. So this is the first time they have seen fire. And remember, research is not something that you know when you are born. There are, I mean, you can't categorize as good researchers or bad researchers, but there are people who have done more research than the others. So they, if you drive more, you have more experience. Similarly, if you do more research, you become more experienced in doing research. And I personally think research is not something very restrictive, shouldn't be something very restrictive. It should give you some happiness, some enjoyment, some in Sinhala Athal even to do research, because otherwise, why do you want to do research? So sometimes I don't know about other faculties, but I am a community medicine public health person. We teach research, and sometimes what we tell might be depressive to the students also, because we try to tell them that it is not very enjoyable. So remember, research is not something that you do in a compartment or in a room under very strict conditions and not allowing you to basically extend your arms and legs and have a nice time. No, research is something that is basically enjoyable if you start doing it. That there is this story going on. If you are a very good researcher and you are walking inside your room and then your foot stuck the chair, you will sit on the chair and write an article telling how the chair should be in the room without injuring yourself. So this is kind of addictive also. And this is just two definitions I saw in the internet. Research is systematic. It has to have some system, investigation into and study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. So no point in doing research if you are not going to get new things, and no point in doing research or duplicating or doing the same thing if other people also have done very recently, because that is will not create or make you find new things. So research should have some systematic basically background. You investigate on anything and you have to find new things. Otherwise, it's couldn't be called research. And then also research involves systematic collection. So again, systematic. So you have to be a system. Collection, you have to collect data, analyze data, interpret data to answer a question or solve a problem. So this question, problem, in other words, when you follow research, basically courses is called or can be called the hypothesis also. So you systematically collect, analyze and interpret data to answer the hypothesis or to prove or disprove the hypothesis. That is research. So in anything, you build a house, you get married, or you live, everything, if there is no system or systematic approach, it might not work. It might not be successful. Similarly, research also, there has to be some system. Otherwise, you might not get good or credible results. And then this is also something I say, so if you can answer these questions, who, when, what, why, where, how, in any research, this is basically your methodology. Who does, when do you do, what do you do, why do you do, and where you do, and how you do. Basically, this is your methodology. Again, research gives rise to citation. So that is why I thought I'd tell a little bit, very, very small bit about research. This is basically the methodology. So when you want to build a house also, you have a method. First you have to have a piece of land, then you have to have what you want to know, then you go and talk with experts, engineers, architects, and then they will give you a plan. Then they or you then go and ask the builders to come and build, and that is basically building a house. Similarly, research, first you get an idea, make it a question, then you might or might not have a hypothesis, then you plan how you are going to do this, do the research. Don't please keep the research as a secret. Then you have to publish, and the title also is how to get more citation for publication. So if no publication, no citation. So, and to do publications, you have to do research. So if no research, no publication, no citation. Have research, have publications, and have citations. So first you have to do research, then you have to publish, and then you get citations. Then why do research? Same kind of thing. Why do you get some publications, but promotion, CV awards, and then Google Scholar citations, index and item index are there. All of you know this. So this is one way of categorizing researchers, but this is not the only way. So just because if you have a high H index, you shouldn't get, I mean, very soul-headed or anything, because I mean, this is only one way. So this is not the only way. And a person who doesn't have even a 1H index might be a very, very good researcher. Who knows? So you shouldn't critically think this is the only way, but this is one way of people categorizing research or research publications or citations. So this is again a picture I found in the internet. So this person has come to interview and he's explaining, my short-term goal is to bluff my way through this job interview. My long-term goal is to invent a time machine so I can come back and change everything I said so far. So this is basically he wants to create or develop or invent or build a time machine. Why? You want to come and change what he said at this interview. So that is your objective of doing the basically the research. So definitely for any research, you have to have an objective. And then people would have taught you research a lot. So I'm not going to talk about that more. And then this is presidential awards for scientific publications. There is a presentation on this later, but I will just tell this. I thought I'll put this. Go to National Research Council website. All the criteria are there. All presidents call you to Colombo, give you a nice meal, and then give the awards. So this is nice. And then you can have this picture in your house if you get presidential awards. Initially, this was started when Mrs. Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumartunga was the president. At that time, money was also given, but now the money giving part has stopped. After Mrs. Bandaranaike, it stopped, but the awarding is continuous, and this is nice thing to get. This also, as I told you, when you have citations, you get this. This is one thing you will get, and this is kind of people think this is very prestigious because not a lot of people have got these awards. And remember, to get these awards, you will have to publish outside Sri Lanka. Unfortunately, although a lot of us give pora talks about research, we only have, I think, one journal, which is a National Science Foundation journal, which is basically in the international databases or research databases. And if you publish in that, you get all this, but none of the other journals in Sri Lanka, I might be wrong, please correct me if you know I'm wrong, but this is, others are not basically cited. So no point in publishing in them, your article might not be visible to others, then no one will cite your article, you won't get citations. So how to get more citations? Remember, you can't do this alone. So doing research, you publishing and getting citations can't do alone. 1, collaborations, 2, collaborations, 3, collaborations, and continue. I only stopped at 3, got basically lazy to continue this, but this is why. So collaborate. So if I was asked by Professor Ekanayaka to give, you only get one slide for this lecture, I will only put collaborations and stop. Because without collaborations, this will not work. Don't be selfish. Give authorship to anyone and everyone, but ask them to contribute some way. There are international author guidelines which you can follow when giving authorships. But don't be selfish, because if you give something to someone, that some person also will reciprocate. So if you remember, you can write maximum about 1 to 2 articles per year. But if you collaborate with 20 people and all 20 write, then you will have 20 publications per year. So you decide. When we were small or we were young, not small, young, it was main author, single author, that kind of thing was there. But now, just to do a literature search and see, there are no single author publications because no one will publish in their journals a single author publication. No, who will read? So remember, more citations, and this is linked, I told you, no, so citations is linked with publication, publication is linked with research. So do research with more and more people. Now I know, unfortunately, I work in this university, we have 9 faculties. This is one of the best places to do research because if any specialist, you can go and meet because it is inside the university. Only thing is engineers are little kind of isolated in the outside the, basically the parliament. Sorry, but you can cross the parliament. They are the only people who are outside the main kind of campus. Don't get engineers angry because Janaki is an engineer. But they are a little bit isolated. But apart from them, all are in the same place. But unfortunately, very few of us collaborate with others. We live in our faculties and our rooms, and we don't collaborate. That I think we have to change. As soon as that is changed, and when more and more people start working with each other, I mean, the university also get more and more sort of recognized, but you get more citations. So individually, if you are very selfish, if you want more citations, collaborate. Otherwise, it won't happen. And this is just 10 things I found again in the internet. So none of this is my findings or anything, it is in the internet. So you also can go and search. But this I thought was nice, simple techniques to boost your citations or increase your citations. Cite your past work. So when you are writing the next article, cite your previous. When it is relevant to new, don't cite everything in everywhere, but whenever it is relevant, do this, cite your past work. Carefully choose your keywords. This is like when you go and read, say, newspaper. First, what will you read? The heading, no? So that is your keywords. If the heading is very interesting, you read the next. Then you, as a researcher, you think this article is good, you cite. But for another person to cite your article, that person has to read your article. So to make it readable or interesting, choose your keywords very, very carefully. And then you use your keywords and phrases in your title and repeatedly in your abstract. So continue to use this because then this come out when other people search for these keywords. So for an example, repeating keywords and phrases will increase the likelihood of your paper will be at the top of a search engine list, making it more likely to be read. So now everyone is interested in the political situation in the country, economic situation in the country. You go to the social media, there are so much of things to read, so much of posts, but how you select is you are basically search and selecting. That is the same thing in research. Now, I know young people, there are a lot of young people I saw in this audience. So young people are very, very conversant with search engine, social media, use that knowledge to do research and always use the same name. Don't change your name. Spelling, name has to not to change. Otherwise, your citations will get divided, right? One name in all your papers. If you have not published a single article today, first select your name. Don't change names. Don't change your spellings also. And always make sure that your information is correct. Check that your name and affiliation are correct on the final proofs of your manuscript, because always there is, when you read the next time, there is some mistake. Always make sure, check, because that is how you can minimize mistakes, duplication, and because this will then be always accurately depicted or presented in databases, and then make your manuscript easily accessible. If you have to go and basically share or contribute into Wikipedia and providing links to your published manuscripts, present your work at conferences. These abstracts, you might not get cited, but sometimes even you get citations because a lot of international conferences, the abstracts are published in some journal as a special collection. So sometimes even they get cited, but here you can basically advertise. So you meet more people. Article, people read, but conference, you meet other people, start talking, tell about your work, and then more and more people will start knowing you and your work. And then, so everyone does this, use social media. You know what? Facebook, Twitter, academia.net, ResearchGate, Mendeley, whatever it is. Provide links to your papers on social media and your university profile page. So always keep this updated because this is what people do and actively promote your work. So talk to other researchers about your paper, even ones not in your field, and email copies of the paper to researchers who may be interested. This will not cost you any money. Create a blog or website dedicated to your research and share it. So this is another way you can become popular. And if you don't do this, basically no one will know you. So this is advertising. Actively promote your work. Talk to other researchers about your work. So these are some simple things that you can do to increase the citation. But remember, for you to get citations, you have to have publication. To have publications, you have to do research. So without doing research, nothing will work. And without, even when you do research, you have to collaborate. And if you don't collaborate, again, you won't have any citations. And that is just a brief one I wanted to tell. Thank you.
Thank you for the session, valuable session, sir. So I would like to hand over the next session to the Professor Roshan Rajel to discuss about uploading preprints. Professor Roshan Rajel was appointed as a senior lecturer in computer engineering at the University of Pennsylvania in December 2007. So over to you, sir, to conduct the next session.
Thank you, Alisha. Good morning, everyone. So thank you for the opportunity from the University Research Council to do this session. It's the title given to me is uploading preprints. In fact, the session I'm going to do in some way is connected to the whole one, but the previous one, particularly on citations. So if you want to improve your citation, one of the ways is to have preprints whenever possible. I'll give more details on various aspects, starting from why, what, and how, where we do preprints. What do we mean by it? Why is it needed, and how do we do it? And the goods and bads about submitting your manuscripts for preprints or preprint servers. Then, if you are decided to do preprint or submit your articles or manuscripts for preprints, how do you maintain the quality of such articles, and also in some cases anonymity? There are some concerns about those. We'll discuss those, and a few other things related to ethics and licenses regarding preprints. And I'll also share some links toward the end. In fact, I used most of these links or the references, resources to prepare this particular presentation as well. So let's start with the why question. Why we need, or why people thought, or the researchers, authors thought about preprints, particularly the process that we usually follow, which was discussed in the previous presentations. Particularly the first one is on peer-reviewed articles. So the classical approach is to do peer review articles, or publish articles using peer review process. What are the problems doing so? One, peer review articles are sort of slow to publish. For example, if you take a journal article to publish, the process of peer reviewing and until the paper gets published, it takes a lot of time, usually about at least about 6 months and more. And there are few journals who have published peer review article faster. And however, there are discussions, concerns about such publications. How can you do it so fast? What are you really doing? I mean, can you really verify, peer review your articles, the articles properly, while if you want to do it that fast? So there are such concerns. And there are situations, so there are certain areas in research where conferences play a big role, particularly in the field like where I am, computer science, engineering related fields, where some conferences are rated much higher than the best peer-reviewed journals. So in situations like that, it's good, but then again, conferences we have to wait, they do once a year. So we have to wait until the cycle for the next year. So it again is slow. On the other hand, these peer-reviewed articles are generally published behind what we call paywall or subscriptions. So there are open access journals which the author or the publishing entity, the author and the research group has to pay for, and therefore they become open access to everyone else. And there's only few of those, and again the authors have to have funding for doing so. And everything else what has to happen is the user or the public or researchers who are going to get access to the articles have to get those articles by pay. So therefore it becomes a challenge for doing so. So what do we do? How do we avoid or how do we overcome those challenges? One, we can think of preprints. So what are preprints? Preprints are the manuscripts that you are writing or the researchers writing can be directly submitted with very little assessment or checks to these public servers, and therefore they the authors get public access. The public get access to those articles, which is if you compare it against the traditional method, which is on the top, where we have the researchers writing the manuscripts and then submitting the journal or conference, and the editors or technical program committee chairperson check at or look at those articles, and then you send it for peer reviews. And if you are not successful, the process repeats. And a single go of this process takes at least 6 months in general or in average. And it takes longer in certain situations and shorter in some other, like I already mentioned. And then you publish. So now you might question, is it one or the other? Do I have to do either peer reviewed articles through conferences and journals, or should I just, or can I only do preprints? Is it possible for me to do both at the same time? The answer is yes. Generally, both at the same time are possible. That is like, so instead of going the upper way, like the peer-reviewed articles, you can take this cycle, the one in blue, where you have two parts. One, you can submit articles to the preprint servers, and therefore the audience, the public or the scientists who are going to read your articles have access to such documents immediately. Usually this takes very short amount of time, hours to days, so very fast. At the same time, you also can submit the manuscript to the journal, which goes through the same process, and it takes longer. However, by the time the article gets published, peer reviewed and published, the article already has been there for a while and also accessed, and it helps advance the research faster. So that's both at the same time are possible. And like I will highlight a little later, there are a large number of publishers now who are publishing journal articles, are also encouraging peer review, preprint version of your articles. So preprint is recommended or suggested by a large number of publishers as well. In addition, it's becoming a community trend to publish articles in or your manuscript in preprints, in addition to go through this process. So obviously there are goods and bads about this process, and we will be discussing them as we go. So now let's take the how question. How can an author publish a preprint? Like I just mentioned earlier as well, so we'll be either using one of the options is to use a preprint server. There are a large number of them. I'll come to that in a little while. So what we can do, this is the most common method where you find a preprint server and you submit your article there. And the preprint server is also considered like an online library where it can be submitted. So the preprint servers, what they do is some of the servers are completely automated, meaning the articles are submitted and without any manual check, they are approved for publication, and some go through some manual checks. So, however, what are checked are generally the manuscripts are checked for errors for form in formatting, language, plagiarism is checked because that can be automatically checked, and certain situations, the scope of the article is also checked. Certain preprint servers allow or have scopes on various type of research. So they will only accept related, and they will do scope check either manually or by using keywords. So therefore, these sort of checks are what are done, and therefore it's really fast when you want to publish on preprint servers. An alternative approach to using a preprint server is we can publish it on, like an author can publish the article on his or her own, where on a personal website or an institutional repository or an institutional website even. Like say I have my own web page in the institution, so I put my article there. So that's possible. Or institutions maintain, certain institutions maintain repositories where you can publish or put technical reports, articles of similar nature or research articles, and we can use that as well. So compared to the preprint servers, publish or posting articles on personal or institutional web pages, repositories might be easier because you don't even have to go through these checks. Whether it's good or bad is a different discussion, but compared to that, it's even less red tape. And you can, you write an article and you put it on your web page. Right? So there's no checks and balances, goods and bads. But then there are other challenges in maintaining your own personal web pages for having articles. Long run, whether you will be able to maintain such web pages, whether the institutions are capable of maintaining web pages. We are all at Peradeniya, and you might already know that we are having troubles with our servers and maintaining. So maintenance is tricky, and long term might be a question. And compared to the preprint servers, the personal or the institutional repositories are relatively no much reputation, obviously, right? So we are not, it might be the case that no checks at all are done. Even the article is put without any proper formatting, no readability, language checks and all that. So therefore it's again relatively less reputable compared to preprints. Obviously the preprints are less reputable, and they have not gone through the peer review yet. That is the idea, right? So therefore they are not validated in the test. So here I'm just comparing between the preprint servers, which are like public servers, online libraries as I call them, and the posting personal sites or institutional repos. So and also you can imagine there are differences between institutional repos and personal websites. The institutional repos have a better reputation because they will have some sort of checks and balances. Obviously not peer reviews. We are not talking about them here. Right. So where do we publish? where are these preprint servers? In fact, there are a few very popular preprint servers, but the list is very long if you want to have an exhaustive list. See, here I had collected a list of about 50 preprint servers. Not all of them are of equal importance or equal in popularity or access, people knowing about them. But some of them have, it's similar to the things like you have journals, publishers, conferences, conference organizers, or supporting professional bodies and so on. So there are differences. Here is a non-exhaustive list of about 50 different servers or preprint servers. So so as a researcher or an author, it's your responsibility to go and look at which one suits you best. Just to give you some idea, for instance, archive.org, arxiv.org is sort of the most popular archive or preprint server. And this server is managed by Cornell University. And if I want to usually go and put preprint article, I'll use archive for my computer science related or my physics related or computer science related. So, but however, if I want to use do some bio or bioinformatics, biomedical, some bio part of the work, then I'll be using some other archive, which is like a bioarchive or med archive. And I have not gone into, I'm not going to go into the details of the rest of the servers here. However, there are plenty, and the two I highlighted are popular, particularly the archive.org is very popular and have large, I don't have the count right now, but really big number of articles. So I remember seeing in some statistics that compared to a place like a place where journals are published a lot, the archives are in parallel. So they have about this, I'm talking about preprint servers, they are in parallel. Not as many journals, articles are published in archives or preprint servers compared to journals, but the numbers are half or little less, about 40% of articles are published in archives compared to good high-end journals, not like all the journals today. Right, so that's where the list of preprint servers and where. And then I'll just take a little time to discuss about the goods and or the pros and cons of publishing or putting your manuscripts in preprints. In fact, over this discussion up to now for the last about 15 plus minutes, I already have highlighted some of these facts. However, just for completion and also recollecting, I will once again do the goods of preprints. Obviously, we started by discussing the challenges, the problems of slowness in reaching out to the public or the audience when you do a research. So preprints are fast, very fast actually. Usually it takes, like I mentioned earlier, it takes less than a few days, sometimes few hours actually, to get your article published. So that's therefore it's very fast, and which is, it can be considered a good thing. Publishing your research fast also has a lot of other benefits. Things like when you find something and when you write and you have an article to publish, and the sooner you publish, the more excited you are, and also the more engaging you would become with the public. Let's say you do some research and you have findings and you're publishing within the next few weeks, and you are still excited, you still know the in and out of everything, and therefore it makes the engagement better. So that's another good part about publishing the articles very fast, or giving access to the audience or your readers fast. And these preprint servers are free. They are run by, they need only smaller budgets only for the, say, things like the hardware and the network connectivity and so on, and very minimum cost. And those costs are usually borne by those who are hosting those servers. And therefore, the service is free for others, for the authors. And not only for the authors, it's free, it's also free for the users. Therefore, it's like, yes, when it's public access. Free in the sense it's free, no money, and also it's free the access. And that is another good part about it. So you get, with this, you get more exposure with preprints. Such exposure can also improve citations. In fact, the archive.org has done a study on a large number of articles which are archived and also non-archived and published only on journals. And they had done this study on a really large number. I can't now remember the number of articles they compared, but they found that articles that are that have preprint has about 3 more citations compared to articles that do not have preprints. So these are all articles that are published in reputed journals, and some articles are with preprints, some are without. The difference is about 3 citations. If I remember right, the average number of citations of these articles are somewhere like 7 or 8. So those who are with the preprints has about 8 citations, while without has about 5 citations. So improving citations, one based on the study, improving citations, one you can do is you can put your manuscripts on preprint servers. So one other good aspect, this is also possible in journals. It also is already happening because the journal publication process is like I was showing you earlier, is a repetitive process where other reviewers look at it and give feedback, and you go through it. The authors revise it and so on. However, there are only a few reviewers who are looking at it, and then it's going to be published. And after publication, it is still possible to do various things like unpublish, for instance, so improve it, change it. But this process is very easy with preprint journals or preprint servers. So the updating process is very straightforward because the publishing process itself is very straightforward. The updating is you just make an update and resubmit it. So updating the preprints and into an improved version is much faster and easier with preprint servers. Some concerns or negatives of preprints. One is, how do you decide quality? Right? So obviously, because these are not yet published, meaning peer reviewed, and published, and therefore we are not clear, we are not sure how good the quality of the research is or the findings are and the article is. And therefore, public will have an opinion, might have an opinion that this work is of low quality, which also has another angle to it. So the readers or the audience might have a difficult time figuring out the difference between a low quality and a high quality research, but if they are only getting access from the preprints, right? So because preprints are not reviewed, not validated, and so on. However, we can also think of ways of improving it. One, obviously, the article becomes valid and verifiable only when you try it out, or you, like it was mentioned earlier in the previous presentations, or you come up, do the peer-reviewed publication, which should eventually happen. And there are also concerns regarding anonymity. Some journals and conference articles, they expect double-blind anonymity, both sides. That might not be possible anymore because the article is already in preprint with the author's names, and therefore it's sort of known that this article is by this group, these authors, and so on. But usually it's okay because that is the case with journal articles. It's not double journal peer reviews. They are not usually double blind. That is only blind on one side. The reviewers will know who the authors are, not the other way around. Therefore, it's not an issue. There are situations where some journals and conferences explicitly prohibited preprints. So that's a challenge. And there's no short answer on how we can overcome this. There are concerns some researchers have on preprints because it's not still a valid publication. Can someone else steal my idea and publish it in a peer-reviewed article, a peer-reviewed journal faster than me, the author, him or herself? That is a concern. So, however, because this peer review or the preprints are becoming part of the community now, so the preprints are considered part of the whole process. Big publishers are considering it so, and the preprints are available publicly, and therefore it's possible for anyone to, like an author, to validate that this idea is mine, and then somebody else publishing it even in a peer-reviewed journal before my peer-reviewed copy comes out. I still can claim it's my work because it's already out. There are also concerns, like, because I mean, sort of the authors might be scared that they are going to put their work out without even getting checked by some other experts. So that is sort of a concern. Yes, I mean, you might feel like embarrassed or feel scared that you're going to put your work out without proper validation or verification, actually. However, you can be more open and open for suggestions, comments, and obviously people can make mistakes and then you can improve on it. So that attitude will sort out this negative, the concerns you have on negative feedback. So just that's about the positive and negatives of preprints and things that I can think of. And how do you maintain the quality of preprints? So preprints, because they are still not reviewed, no one has really looked at it, except that there are these minor assessments that are done on the format, the language, things like the plagiarism check and so on. There's no much done. So therefore, it's we had to, the authors have to pay more attention on when they're putting out preprints. And the preprints also have things like all the authors, like any publication, all the authors have to accept that the manuscript is owned by all of them, and they agree to publish, and therefore they have to, all the authors have to take this responsibility seriously and make sure the article that goes out to the preprint is of good quality. If there are problems, errors, comments on certain aspects, it's always good to go back and update them, accept the mistakes and update them like in a healthy scientific community. So maintaining the quality of the preprints is similar to maintaining the quality of the submission of any article to a journal publisher. Just the manuscript itself, not the final copy. So when you are submitting a journal article, or sorry, a manuscript to a publisher for review, you anyway have to maintain quality for getting accepted into it. So it's something similar, so you have to maintain. And maintaining anonymity in the review process is sometimes a concern, like I mentioned earlier. However, it's not really the, I mean, one of the things that we can consider is, like I said earlier, the journal articles are usually doing not double blind, only one side, and therefore it's not an issue. The reviewers already know who the authors are in general situations in journals, and it's the same. It's going to be the same here. On the other hand, if a reviewer wants to figure out who the public or who the authors of a paper are, there are a lot of other ways of doing it. It doesn't have to come only through the preprints. One other option is to keep the preprint not published until the acceptance of the journal happens or the review of the journal happens, but that is going to delay the process, so which goes against the original problem we are trying to solve. But that's also possible. So without waiting until the paper is completely out published by the journal, but right until the review, like like maybe 70% or 80% of the time consumed for peer-reviewed journals. Some ethical concerns. So, I mean, if you just take a step back and think about it a little further, we are talking about sharing our research findings as fast as possible with the community is one, and also at the same time give access to as many as possible. So unless you have money to do open access journal publications, that will solve the problem of everyone getting access. So because open access are going to give access to everyone. Otherwise, you had to find an alternative, and the alternative would be a preprint in addition to publishing it in a paywalled journal publication. So you have some responsibility in terms of the funding you have, and the funding you reserve, and the research you do, and all that, and therefore it's a good idea to do this publication. I mentioned this already. And also now, like I mentioned earlier, there are journals who are and some conferences are already encouraging preprints. You can go and look at these links like Elsevier and Springer and others. They are encouraging preprints, and they are telling how exactly you can do preprints submissions before or while you are submitting an article for peer review. So regarding licenses, generally, I mean, there's not much to say there. And particularly when you do peer review, when you do preprint submissions, the publisher themselves, they will propose licenses. Particularly the licenses they propose are things like Creative Commons, and there are other licenses. So you can look at the most suitable one for your article plus the data that you put out and decide on licenses. There's a lot more about licenses we can discuss, but not at this point. So I'll not go into further details on that here. These are some useful links on general idea about preprints, preparation and publication, the steps that you have to follow, and goods and bads. I took the goods and bads from this list of pros and cons from this list of these blog posts actually. And the things that I mentioned about Springer and those links are here. I can share this slides with the organizers, and you will have access to those links. That's all I have, and thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, we can take one. I see there are some chat messages. So there's one question about whether the preprints are considered for promotion points. The answer is no, as of now. So there's another question about whether the preprint manuscript and the journal can both be done at the same time. I already answered that. Generally, the publishers are allowing it. They are aware of the preprint, and they are also encouraging. And there are certain publishers who don't. So you have to pay attention to the publisher before you do so. Not open access. So there's a question whether we can do the preprints after a journal accepting the paper. Yes, it's possible. In fact, like I had done about 10 years or so ago, preprints were not that popular. However, after the papers getting accepted, with the flexibility that is possible, there are ways of putting preprints later as well. So that's one question. Yeah, it's possible. We can do preprints, but just pay attention to the journal's publication policy and sharing policy, and you can do so. So the preprints can be done later as well. That is not for making things faster, but accessible. Yeah. Thank you, and I'll stop there.
Thank you, sir, for bringing the expertise and experience around the table. So the next item is predatory journal and how to do you identify them in. So this will be discussed by Professor Vijitha Hera. Professor Vijitha Hera is a professor in Electrical and Electronic Engineering, University of Peradeniya. So over to you, sir, for the presentation.
I think I am audible to everybody.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank University Research Council for inviting me to be a resource person in this workshop. And the title of my presentation is Literary Journals and how do you identify them. As we are now at the end of this workshop, probably you may have been a little tired as well. So I would like to make this as brief as possible, but as informative as possible as well. So these literary journals are somewhat new topic discussed among academic circles. So I would like to, like in this presentation, what I will do is I will give an introduction to like regular journals, how they are ranked and how you can identify their recognitions, and then go into the predatory journal section. So generally, as you all know, scientific exploration is a major component of the responsibilities of an academic. So when you're recruited, you are expected to teach, then do research, and then participate in some administrative activities. Those are three main components, and the scientific exploration and the outcomes of those explorations will give you recognition outside your university, in your country or in international level. So this is very important aspect, and it is considered for your promotions as well as different fellowships. So when you do a scientific exploration, you want to present the outcomes of those work. Generally, if I am a researcher, what I will do is first publish in several conferences the results, and then when you get a somewhat reasonable good outcome, we go for scientific journals as an outlet to share our work. So these, if I take like credible scientific journals, they use a rigorous peer review process. I mean, I think all of you may have, or at least most of you may have gone through this process. So you know, in a normal journal, you get at least like 3 reviewers, and then they will go through your paper, and then either they will accept your paper or maybe accept with certain revisions, or accept without revisions, but then they will comment on your work, and that comments are very valuable to improve your work, as well as sometimes you may get some new ideas regarding future research. So the reputation of an academic, that means the people who are doing research, is hinged on the publishing your outcomes of research or explorations in credible scientific journals. So you have to have a way to identify what are the journals which are credible, and are there some journals which are not that credible. So those, I mean, these things don't have any legal implication, but in the academic community, people tend to look at your profile generally depending on the papers you published and where did you publish your papers, and all those things are actually considered in the academic circles when it comes to a researcher. So as I think few of earlier presenters mentioned, there are different types of journals available. One is subscription-based journals, or we can call it closed access journals. So to access them, you need to have an individual subscription or maybe institutional subscription. So for example, if you are a member of IEEE Society, for example, if I take a Solid State Circuit Society, you get access to the journal published by that society, and but you don't get access to the whole IEEE Explorer database, only to that journal. Generally, universities or consortium of universities can get together and obtain the subscription to a standard database. It may be IEEE Explorer, that is with regard to electrical and electronic engineering, but generally there are some other databases with regard to Elsevier and then Web of Science. All these things are available. So in the case of subscription-based journals, the authors don't have to pay article processing fee, but in certain cases, if your paper is exceeding certain page limit, then you have to, the authors have to pay that additional page charges. And this has been the preferred mechanism for scientific publications for a long time. But relatively recently, maybe 10, 15 years, since 10 to 15 years time, you have this open access journals where the author, the access to the publications is free. So anybody can access the papers inside these journals, but the authors have to pay an article processing fee. And this fee can be varying a bit depending on the journal or the reputation of the journal. And in one way, it is good because the visibility of your paper is high, but when it comes to the developing economies, sometimes the article processing fees are too high for them to bear. And this has increasingly becoming popular among publishers, such as Elsevier, IEEE, Nature, and etc. One reason may be, as you all know, even though there are subscription-based journals, there are avenues for the researchers to access those papers without paying subscription. So because of that, these publishing houses may lose revenue. But with regard to open access, they don't have to worry about that. The publication is actually financed by the authors itself. And there's a new trend where even the subscription-based journals, authors can make their articles open access. So you don't. It can be a like traditional journal, subscription-based journal, but the authors has the opportunity to make it open access by paying a certain fee. So let's look at recognition of scientific journals. I mean, we know there are like thousands of journals available, and if an amateur or new researcher want to publish his or her work, he has to identify the recognition of the journal he or she is going to publish. So there are certain ways of identifying this recognition. Generally, recognized journals are indexed by various bodies, or at least they are like generally almost all recognized journals are indexed in one of the many indexing bodies. So for example, we have Web of Science, Scopus, which are indexing services, and I think Web of Science is managed by Clarivate Analytics, and Scopus is managed by Elsevier. And then you have Directory of Open Access Journals, as well as PubMed. And there are some other indexing services. If you take Web of Science, they have what we call Science Citation Index and Social Science Citation Index. But now they have the combined Science Citation Index into what we call Science Citation Index Expanded. And Scopus publishes a list of index journals as well. And the SciMargo General Rank is also a free online database. Scopus and Web of Science, you can have free access to a certain level, but if you need more information, probably you may have to a subscription. But SciMargo is a free database where they obtain information from Scopus. And the directory of open access journals is a community-based, community-curated online directory that indexes and provides access to high-quality open access peer-reviewed journals. So you have to keep in mind when it comes to the predatory journals, the open access concept is highly, I mean, they use that concept in predatory journals. So you need to actually, when you check the quality of the journal, these databases or indexing services, you need to check and then select the suitable journal for your work. So if you look at the recognition of a scientific journal, for example, I take IEEE Open Journal of Communication Society. This is a journal published by IEEE Communication Society, and this is an open access journal. So you can see here I have put this front page of the journal page. So you can see this is an open access journal, and it has a rapid review process with 6 to 4 weeks duration from submission to publication. Even though they have mentioned 6 to 4 weeks, it can be longer than that in most cases. But what they mentioned in their website is 4 to 6 weeks. And now, if you want to check the recognition of this journal, first we can go to this DOAJ website and search this journal. DOAJ has, I mean, it is a database which gives information about the open access journals which are recognized. So when you search that in the DOAJ, you can see it is listed in that database. So that means it is recognized as an open access journal. And then you can also check the Web of Science and you can search the same journal in the Web of Science, and you can see the information given for that journal. It is listed in the Web of Science, so that means it has a recognition generally. So if you take the citation, you can see it is listed as Emerging Sources Citation Index. So it is not in Science Citation Index or Science Citation Index Expanded, but it is in the Emerging Sources Citation Index. So this thing is like this journal, IEEE Open Journal of Communication Society, is like it is like it was launched recently. So for a journal to index, it has to be published for a number of years. But before that, it is not getting indexed in like Science Citation Index or Science Citation Index Expanded. But it can be indexed in the other databases such as Emerging Sources Citation Index, which is managed by the Web of Science service. And then if you take another open access journal, which is IEEE Access, this is also a multidisciplinary journal. The earlier journal was actually a journal published by Communication Society. So the topics are mostly related to telecommunication research. But if you take IEEE Access, it is a multidisciplinary journal, and it also listed the duration from submission to publication as 4 to 6 weeks, but generally it is more than that, even though it is listed here. And if you check the availability of IEEE Access in the Web of Science database, you can see it is listed and it is indexed under Science Citation Index Expanded. And then it is also listed in the Scopus database, and it is also listed. I mean, if it is in the Scopus database, you can access. I mean, you can obtain information regarding that in the SciMargo database. So if I go to SciMargo database, so you can see okay. So you can see if you go to this SciMargo site, it is listed in the SciMargo, and if you go further down, it gives certain parameters or matrices with regard to this. They have certain matrices to identify the quality of this journal. So one is citation per document. It says around in 2021, 2-year citation index is 4.276, and then there are other 3-year one is 4.6, and those are the information available. And then if you go down, it says this is a Q1 journal. Then I mean in SciMargo they categorize journals like Q1, Q2, Q3, and so on, and Q1 being the highest cluster. So that gives certain information regarding the quality of the journal you are going to publish. So so here we discussed about something called impact factor. This is a citation per document, and then we have what is called impact factor. For many journals, we hear the term impact factor. There are different ways of measuring the quality of a journal. One way is impact factor, and there are other parameters as well. I'm not going to go into details about that. So generally, the way of calculating the impact factor, like 1-year or 2-year impact factor, is that, for example, if you take any journal, parameter is the total sites in, let's say, year 1992. And this is an extraction from Web of Science. And if parameter B is the 1992 sites to the articles published in 90 and 91. Okay. Then C is the number of articles published in 90, 91. And the impact factor of 1992 is the ratio between all the citations in 1992 of the papers published in 1990 and 1991 divided by number of articles published in 1990 to 1991. So this is the what we call the impact factor, and in the figure shown here, you can see you can see the percentage of public journals which has citation factor greater than a certain value. For example, 73.2 number of journals have citation impact factor greater than 1. And if you take impact factor greater than 2, you have 42.1% journals. And if you take impact factor 5 or above, you have around 8% journals which those have impact factor greater than 5. And not all journals have an impact factor. General impact factor is actually listed by Web of Science, and and they only provide it for index journals in the Science Citation Index Expanded or Social Science Citation Index Expanded. But then there are other indexing services as well, and they have different matrices or parameters to identify the impact of the journal. Then now we can go to the predatory journals and how to identify them. There's no clear definition for a predatory journal because, as I mentioned earlier, this has no legal basis. I mean, you can't like sue or take to court anybody with regard to publishing or managing a predatory journal. But these are some features of there are some features for a predatory journal. One feature is actually they actively solicit authors to submit papers. I mean, you may have experienced this in your day-to-day work. You get emails asking you to submit to certain journals, submit your work to certain journals. So generally they solicit authors, and but please don't misunderstand this with the like messages you get with regard to, for example, if you are a member of a certain society, they might time to time send you information regarding their journals. But what I'm talking about is somewhat like spam emails which solicit you to submit papers to that journal. And then second one is they don't provide adequate peer review. You can see from their website that they say your work will be published in a very short duration of time, which is normally not realistic. And they also, as I mentioned, may advertise an unrealistic timeline for publication. And generally they publish all articles if the authors pay article processing charge. And then the other thing is that these processing fees are not very transparent. At least generally you can't see those information in like their website pages as well. And then they advertise journal impact factor or other citation metric on website that cannot be verified. I mean, they mentioned that this journal has an impact factor of this much, but the verification of it and how that impact factor was calculated is not transparent. And almost all predatory journals are open access because they want you to pay for the publication. So that is their business model. In a normal traditional publication process, they as journalists don't like charge the authors, they can't do it. But in the case of open access, the authors are paying. Because of that, these predatory journals use that avenue to their benefit. I mean, if you take eventually their objective should be making profits. So this is some like this is a like email I received sometimes back. So you can see publish your paper with international index journal impact factor 4.635 kind of thing. And then they have like email addresses which are not institution based, or sometimes they have like Gmail accounts and things like that. And if you go to these websites, this is one example. Generally, they are like multidisciplinary, as I mentioned, shown here. And so generally, they are multidisciplinary and open access. And as I mentioned earlier, if you go to their website, you can see things like this. Within 5 days after submission, you will get the acceptance of paper. So it doesn't mention anything about the peer review process. There is like editorial board and other things like that, and then you can't see any information regarding actual publication fees. And then they also mention or list a certain impact factor, which where I mean you can't. I mean the origin of this impact factor is questionable as well. So you have to dig deeper into this information. So first step is as they are open access journals, you have to go to this DOAJ database and search whether this paper, this journal is available in that database. And as you can see, it is not available in that database. So you can actually have a confidence that this is this can be a predatory journal. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the publication fees are not transparent. You can't find it exactly what is the publication fee in the website. And here they have mentioned some information regarding the acceptance rate ratio and things like that, but it is somewhat questionable in my opinion. It says manuscript submission, that is given a number, and papers published also given a number, but we don't know whether those who submitted the papers eventually decided not to actually pay the fee, so that it is not published. So that is the information we want to verify. But again, here also you can see this impact factor. They have mentioned SJIF and this Cosmos, something like that. So if you dig deeper into those impact factor matrices, so if you go to SJIF, there's a certain service, and they say the editorial staff who decide to use this option will receive the SJIF value within 7 days. But nowhere in this website you can get an information regarding the mechanism or methodology of actually obtaining this impact factor. Generally these services are provided for a fee. So this is like a business model. So even though they mentioned about impact factor, something called SJIF, you can't find any information regarding how they actually calculate this impact factor. And there's another so-called the site which mentioned about providing impact factor services. They are also they are in Cosmos impact factor within 7 days by paying minimum fee. Those things are there. As mentioned here, it is like fees also mentioned. One is like $75 US, and the one is Indian rupees 5,000. Again, if you even if you want to get an idea of how they actually calculate these values or impact factors, you can't get those information from these websites. So I mentioned, I have shown you certain features of predatory journals. You have to, look carefully. You have to search those databases and see whether the journals you are going to publish are listed on those databases. Not all journals are listed in Web of Science, but that does not mean they are predatory journals. There is a certain process for a journal to appear in the Web of Science or Scopus or anything like that. You have to look at several steps, like their peer review process, how long they say it will take from submission to publication, and publication fees, and all this information taken together, you will be able to judge whether this journal is a predatory journal or not. And then why you need to avoid those journals. I think I mentioned at the beginning as well, these journals undermine the integrity of scientific publication process because they don't have a peer review process, or it may have like minimum peer review, which doesn't make any sense. So that means your paper will not get good feedback, and as a result, sometimes the papers may be published with major technical errors, and most of the time they may not do any editorial process or whatever we call this language checking. So there may be the grammatical or spelling errors in the papers as well. And these journals don't have a visibility as well. So whatever the papers you publish will not get cited by others for several reasons. One reason is the authors may not, I mean, people who know these are literary journals will not go into the databases and check those papers at all. And then the third thing is that, as I mentioned earlier, reputation of research can be damaged by publishing in literary journals. So, for example, when you apply for, let's say, promotion, you have to list your list the journals you have published. Generally, you get for index journals, you get more marks than unindexed journals. And then if you list a predatory journal, and the person who evaluates your application will see that, and it can actually act negatively with regard to complete application, because they think that they may think that the work you are doing is substandard because you have published in predatory journal. So you have to be very careful not to. Very careful when you select a journal to publish your work. In a normal like the whatever we call credible journals, it is a rigorous peer review process, but it is well worth doing it, because ultimately you will get very good outcome. Whereas in predatory journals, it may be easy to publish, but the recognition you will not get recognition from by publishing in those journals. So those are the things I have to actually discuss with regard to literary journal publishing. And the one question is there a way to withdraw the manuscript once it was submitted to a literary journal? Actually, I mean, as I mentioned, literary journals are not very professional entities, so I don't have any experience with regard to whether we can. One thing is, if you don't pay the article processing fee, you can they will not publish it. That is one thing. But once published, whether it can be retracted, I am not sure. I mean, there may be people in the audience who may have some idea about whether you can actually withdraw or retract if you submit a paper to a predatory journal. Is it like possible to retract it? If there's anybody like that, he can answer as well. I mean, these journals are not does not function like a normal publication, normal or regular or credible journal publication. So their process is very gray. Dr. Andrew Vimalratna mentioned that nowhere to withdraw once it is published. Okay. Yeah. So I think that means that you have to be very careful in selecting your journal to avoid those predatory journals. I mean, there is like easy way to find it out. One is check all these standard databases, and then if it is not listed in any one of those databases, probably you should avoid that publication, avoid that journal. Then I think a lot of trouble will be spared. Okay, thank you very much for listening to my presentation.
So thank you, Professor Vichitra. That's conducted a very informative presentation. So the next session, the final session, will be Presidential Research Award for Publication, and it will be presented by Assistant Director, Scientific Affairs, National Research Council. So over to you, sir, to conduct the session.
Yeah. I would like to thank University of Peradeniya Research Council for giving us this opportunity to speak on this subject. And I will share my presentation, actually developed by scientific officer handling this program. This is Nalisha Karnaratna and myself Presidential Awards for Scientific Research is the program the National Research Council developed, designed to recognize the publications, the scientific achievement of our scientists by means of publications, and it is one of our objectives to give recognition to scientific achievements of our scientists. Then we will move to the history a little bit. This was started in 2001 to honor our scientists reaching to international standards to increase national scientific production. The national statistics of publication output from 1991 to a date reveal that what could perhaps be the beginning of an upward trend. Not from 1991, but the graph starts from 1995. Here we can see the upward trend. All citable documents from Sri Lanka. It has reached by 2001, when we started the program, it was 277. By 2017, it has reached to 1879. Then I would like to brief you the selection process. We had from time to time we select, the council selects the criteria to select these publications to be awarded for President's Award certificate. From 2019 onward, awards are given for the publication, that is the piece of research, rather than to the individual scientist. Previous years, it was given to the individual scientists. Awards will be given for patents related to science in addition to publications. This is a new addition with the current criteria. As the NRC also wishes to encourage research that is conceptualized and performed mainly in Sri Lanka. Consideration given to the level of contribution made by our scientists, Sri Lankan scientists, and the publication in instances where there is international collaboration. We will go into detail. We obtain our database from Scopus, that is sponsorship by given by Elsevier BV. It includes all the publications which has Sri Lankan scientists publication contribution for the relevant year. Among those publications, data sorting done by following the criteria for the Presidential Award for Scientific Research. Then we go to the criteria. The criteria is an award will be given to each of the top 100 papers published in journals with the highest Simago journal ranking, SJR, extracted from the Scopus database, in which 20% or more of the authors of the publication has to be Sri Lankan scientists with Sri Lankan institutional affiliation. These three requirements has to be met. Top 100 papers, it has to be among top 100 papers, and Sri Lankan participation has to be 20% or more, and the Sri Lankan participants should be from Sri Lankan institutional affiliations. That proves that our institutes produce these research publications. Then it could be in the other way, to each international patent, that by this word non-Sri Lankan patent published or granted based on an innovation in science awarded in a given year to a Sri Lankan scientist or a group of scientists with a Sri Lankan institutional affiliation. Sometimes our scientists get patented in foreign countries, then it will become an international patent. Among research papers, we consider research articles, reviews, short communications for the presidential awards. For publications like meeting abstracts, editorial material, letters, corrections, notes, newspapers, book chapters, conference proceedings, case reports, and correspondence communication, we subject those into a panel. Decision will be taken whether to consider them or not after judging by the panel of experts appointed by the NRC Council. Most of the times, the panel members will be the council members of NRC. For patents, NRC advertising newspapers in child languages for calling applications from Sri Lankan scientists with a Sri Lankan institutional affiliation who have obtained an international patent for an innovation in science in the relevant year. Then we have the second tier of awards that is called Merit Awards. Each year, an award will be given for the second top 100 papers published in journals with the highest Imago journal ranking. There are also that requirement, 20% or more of the Sri Lankan public authors, and the Sri Lankan institutional affiliation remains the same. Or each national patent published or granted based on innovation in science awarded in a given year to a Sri Lankan scientist or group with a Sri Lankan institutional affiliation. We consider for merit award. That's for all for our the criteria, and I believe you got some idea on that. And I would like to say
thank you, Mr. Sampath Monis, for presenting the valuable session. I would like to take this opportunity to thank resource persons for sharing their knowledge. Thank you everyone for attending the workshop.